What would you do if a stranger on a plane held your baby, and by the time you landed, he held your heart too? The crying pierced through the airplane cabin like a siren. Heads turned. Passengers sighed. Some pulled earbuds deeper into their ears. Others exchanged annoyed glances. Amelia Carter clutched her 6-month-old daughter, Grace, tighter to her chest. Her arms ached. Her eyes burned from exhaustion. But the baby just wouldn't stop. "I'm so sorry," she whispered over and over again, voice cracking with each apology. "To everyone." "I'm trying. I really am." She bounced Grace gently. Nothing worked. Grace was wailing louder, her tiny lungs competing with the engine's hum, and Amelia could feel it, the heat of judgmental stares pressing into her back like knives. She had been awake for almost 36 hours. Double shift at the diner, quick stop home to pack, red-eye flight from Los Angeles to Chicago. All for her sister Sloane's wedding, a sister she hadn't spoken to in 2 years. The plane ticket had cost her every penny she had. Money she should have saved for rent, but family still mattered, or at least that's what she told herself. The flight attendant approached with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ma'am, you need to calm your baby. Other passengers are trying to sleep." Amelia nodded quickly. "I know, I'm trying. She hasn't slept in days." And the change in routine. The attendant had already moved on. Amelia's voice faded, her cheeks flushed with shame. Her hands trembled as she tried adjusting the tiny blanket draped over Grace's squirming body. She looked around. An older man across the aisle muttered, "Maybe you should have stayed home." Another passenger a few rows ahead raised a phone. Was she being recorded? The humiliation twisted in Amelia's stomach. She had become that person. The one strangers post videos of, with snarky captions like, "Entitled Mom Ruins Flight for Everyone." If only they knew. If only they saw the moldy walls of her tiny studio apartment. The nights she skipped dinner, so Grace had enough formula. The Honda Civic sitting lifeless in the parking lot for weeks because she couldn't afford repairs. If only they knew how hard she tried, but they didn't. All they saw was a tired young woman with a screaming baby and the audacity to exist in public. Tears welled up in her eyes. She blinked them back, kissing the top of Grace's head. "Please, sweetheart. Please." Her voice cracked like dry wood. Grace's cries rose in pitch, sharp, relentless. Amelia shifted in her seat, desperately trying to soothe her. Her entire body ached from holding Grace, from carrying too much, from never letting go. She thought about retreating to the bathroom. Maybe she could bounce the baby in the narrow space away from the glares. Just as she started unbuckling her seatbelt, a voice beside her spoke softly. "Excuse me, would you mind if I tried something? Excuse me, would you mind if I tried something?" Amelia froze. She turned and saw him for the first time, the man in the seat beside her. Dark hair, neatly combed, crisp navy blue suit, a watch that probably cost more than her car used to. And blue eyes, the kind that didn't judge, just offered. "I've had some experience with babies," he added with a gentle smile. "My sister has 3. I've picked up a few tricks over the years." Amelia blinked, unsure how to respond. Why would someone like him want to help her? He looked like he belonged in first class, maybe even on the cover of a finance magazine. Not squished into economy next to a single mother whose diaper bag was falling apart at the seams. Still, Grace was still crying, and Amelia was out of options. You want to try?" she asked hesitantly. "If you're comfortable with it," he said. "Sometimes just a different voice helps." She looked into his eyes. Something in her bone-tired and raw said yes. She carefully transferred Grace into his arms. The baby resisted at first, twisting, her cheeks red and damp. But then, something shifted. The stranger cradled her with practiced ease, large hand resting on her back. He began to hum. Low, calm, like waves brushing against a quiet shore. And Grace quieted. Her cries turned into hiccups, then soft whimpers, and within seconds, silence. Stunned, Amelia stared. Her mouth fell open. She hadn't seen Grace that calm in days. "How did you do that?" she whispered. He shrugged modestly. "Like I said, lots of practice." Passengers nearby visibly relaxed. A woman across the aisle mouthed, "Thank you." The older man who had muttered earlier now gave a nod of approval. The flight attendant passed again. This time her expression had softened. Amelia sagged back in her seat, muscles unclenching. For the first time in hours, no, in days, she breathed without fear of judgment. "You're a miracle worker," she said under her breath. The man chuckled. "I just know a few lullabies." "Her name's Grace," Amelia offered quietly. "Grace," he repeated, as if trying the name on for size. "That suits her." "I'm Amelia," she added. "Sorry I didn't introduce myself sooner. Kind of been a rough night." "I figured," he said kindly. "I'm Julian." There was a pause. "Julian Westwood," he added, almost like it was an afterthought. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Amelia couldn't place it. Her world didn't exactly overlap with people in navy suits and Italian shoes. Grace shifted against his chest, her tiny fingers curling into the lapel of his jacket. "She likes you," Amelia said. Julian smiled. "I like her too." There was no flirtation in his tone, no condescension, just sincerity. And in that moment, something in Amelia's chest cracked open, not in pain this time, but in relief. This wasn't a man trying to impress. He wasn't looking at her with pity or curiosity. He was just there. "I haven't slept I don't even know," Amelia admitted, rubbing her temple. "Rest," Julian said simply. "I've got her." She hesitated. Everything in her said to stay alert, stay in control. But her eyelids were heavy, her shoulders so tired. Grace was calm. Safe. And Julian. He was humming again. Before she knew it, Amelia's head leaned slightly to the side. The steady hum of the engines, the warmth of Julian's voice, Grace's tiny sighs. Sleep came like a wave, not deep, but peaceful. The kind of rest you only get when, for once, someone else is holding the weight of your world for you. And for the first time in months, Amelia let go. When Amelia stirred, the cabin lights had dimmed. There was a soft announcement overhead. The plane would begin its descent into Chicago in 30 minutes. She blinked, momentarily disoriented. Her head was resting against something warm and solid. Then she realized she was still leaning on Julian's shoulder and in his arms. Grace. Fast asleep, peaceful, breathing in soft little puffs against his chest. Amelia shot upright. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She reached for her daughter, flustered, her cheeks burning. I didn't think I would actually fall asleep on you like that." Julian just smiled. "You were exhausted," he said calmly. "She woke up once, but I got her back down." He handed Grace back to her gently. Amelia noticed the drool stain on his designer suit and winced. "She's an angel when she sleeps," she murmured, brushing Grace's hair. Julian tilted his head. "And so are you. You just haven't had a chance to rest your wings." Amelia gave him a look. "That's poetic. And probably not true." "I think it is," Julian said, softer this time. "I've watched you tonight, the way you apologized to every stranger, the way you held your daughter even while you were breaking." She looked down, uncomfortable. "You don't know me." "Maybe not," he said. "But I know what it looks like when someone's holding the world on their shoulders." There was a silence. Then Amelia said the thing she hadn't said out loud in weeks. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. Julian didn't respond right away, so she kept going, words spilling out in a rush. I work 2 jobs, one at the diner and one cleaning offices after hours. My car broke down 3 weeks ago, and I haven't been able to fix it. I had to borrow money from a co-worker just to get this plane ticket. And I still have to face my sister tomorrow, who probably thinks I'm a failure for even showing up. Her voice cracked on the last word. I'm behind on rent. I'm behind on everything. And the worst part is, I haven't told anyone, because no one really wants to hear it. Julian didn't flinch. Didn't blink, just listened, like he was hearing every word and holding it. That's a lot, he said after a long pause. Amelia gave a bitter laugh. Understatement of the year. You're brave. No, she said quickly. I'm broke and tired and completely out of options. That's not brave. That's just surviving. Julian leaned forward slightly, his tone steady. No, it's exactly brave. You're doing the impossible alone, and you're still showing up for your daughter, for your family, even when they don't show up for you. Amelia's throat tightened. She hadn't cried in front of anyone in years. But something in the way Julian spoke, like he wasn't praising her to flatter, but just stating facts, made her chest ache in a new way, a healing way. Why are you even sitting back here in economy? She asked suddenly. You don't exactly blend in, Julian chuckled. Let's just say first class is overrated. Sometimes the most meaningful people are sitting where no one's looking. That's not an answer? He raised a brow. It's the only one you're getting right now. Amelia shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips despite herself. So you're mysterious. Great. I'm just a guy who likes quiet conversations with interesting people, Julian replied. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither said anything. Then Amelia whispered, Thank you. For what? For holding my baby when I was falling apart. For letting me sleep. For not judging me. Julian's voice was almost a whisper too. You don't know how rare it is to meet someone who's real. You've given more tonight than I've seen people give in years. The plane tilted slightly as it descended through the clouds. Passengers began stirring, reaching for their bags, checking their phones. The spell broke, but not completely. Amelia looked down at Grace, then at the man beside her. Something had shifted in the dark. And though she didn't fully understand it yet, she knew this wasn't the last time she'd see Julian Westwood. The plane touched down with a soft jolt. The cabin filled with the sounds of buckles unclicking and overhead bins opening. Amelia sat still. Grace was still asleep in her arms, her tiny fingers curled tightly around Amelia's necklace. Julian stood, effortlessly retrieving Amelia's battered duffel bag from the overhead bin before she could move. Here, he said, offering it to her with a smile. I've got it, she said quickly, reaching for the handle herself. He didn't argue. He just nodded and let her take it, as if he understood that helping didn't mean taking over. As they filed out through the jet bridge, Julian stayed beside her. Most strangers parted ways the moment the seatbelt sign turned off, but he didn't. Outside, the Chicago air bit at her cheeks. The terminal was loud, crowded, fluorescent. Amelia shifted Grace onto one shoulder and tried to fix the zipper on her old bag. You look like you're going to the wedding of the year, Julian said gently. But your bag is holding on by a thread. It's doing its best, Amelia said, smiling faintly. When they reached the baggage claim area, Julian paused. People swirled around them, business travelers with sleek luggage, families reuniting, couples arguing about ride shares. But Amelia felt like the two of them were in a pocket of stillness. I want to give you something, he said. She tilted her head, confused. Julian reached into the inside pocket of his suit and pulled out a small cream-colored card. He held it between two fingers and offered it to her. Amelia took it, slowly. Raised lettering, thick paper. It felt expensive. Her eyes scanned the name. Julian Westwood, CEO, Westwood Industries. She blinked, read it again. CEO of Westwood Industries. Amelia had seen that name before on signs downtown, in magazine articles at the salon, during charity drives at her old high school. "Wait, what?" she whispered. Julian shifted uncomfortably, as if the air had changed around them. "You're a billionaire?" she asked, still in disbelief. He winced at the word. "I run a company, and yes, technically, yes." Amelia just stared at him. The man who held her baby, who let her sleep, who sat in economy, who wore a wrinkled suit now stained with baby drool. "That doesn't make sense," she said aloud. Julian smiled gently. "Most of the time, it doesn't." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if I had, you wouldn't have spoken to me the same way," he said simply. And deep down, she knew he was right. If he had said CEO on that plane, she would have shut down. Would have assumed he was just another rich guy feeling generous, or worse, curious. "You helped me," she whispered. "You didn't have to." "I didn't help you because I had to," Julian replied. "I helped you because I wanted to, because you mattered, before you knew who I was." She stared at the card in her hand again. "So simple, so powerful. You're not just the guy in seat 22A. "No," he said. "But I wish I could be. Just for a little longer." They stood there for a long moment. "I don't want this to be the end of the conversation," he said. "If you ever need anything, that card works." She looked at him, really looked at him, and then at Grace, who was still curled against her shoulder. "I don't need charity," she said. "I'm not offering charity," he replied. "I'm offering options." The distinction settled over her like a soft blanket. Julian stepped back, giving her space. "I know this is a lot," he added. "I just didn't want to walk away without you knowing." Amelia nodded slowly. And for the first time since she'd boarded that plane, she felt like maybe, just maybe, something was shifting, something real. As Julian turned to walk away, he glanced back. "Take care of Grace and yourself." Then he disappeared into the crowd. Amelia stood still in the middle of the terminal, her baby sleeping against her chest. The card still warm in her hand, and for the first time in a long, long time. She had no idea what would happen next. But for once, she had hope. The motel room smelled like old carpet and forgotten dreams. Amelia dropped her duffel bag beside the bed with a tired thud. Grace had finally stopped fussing, resting in her arms, but Amelia's mind was anything but quiet. She couldn't stop replaying it. The flight, Julian's voice. The business card, Julian Westwood, CEO. Billionaire, known for charity. It made no sense. Why had someone like him, someone who could charter a private jet, been sitting in economy? Why had he helped her so personally? It didn't sit right. She sat on the edge of the mattress, looking down at Grace. Her daughter was so peaceful, so trusting. Exactly the kind of child someone might use for a PR stunt. That thought made Amelia's stomach twist. She opened her phone and Googled Julian Westwood. First result, a recent photo of him shaking hands at a press conference. Next to it, a headline. Westwood Industries expands single mother housing initiative. Her blood ran cold. A housing initiative for single mothers, led by him. She scrolled further. Julian Westwood launches Women First mentorship program to support low-income mothers re-entering the workforce. Another headline. Westwood Foundation praised for hands-on outreach strategies. Her hand trembled as she set the phone down. It couldn't be coincidence. He had sat right next to her, listened to her entire life story. Let her break down in front of him, all while knowing she fit his demographic. Her heart thudded painfully. Was she just another case? Another success story he could check off? Amelia Carter, 23, single mother, cried in row 22B, recommended for assistance. She felt sick. How dare he? How dare he not tell her? There was a knock at the door. She jolted. Her heart raced as she approached the peephole. It wasn't Julian. It was her sister, Sloane, elegant, poised, and holding a bottle of white wine, probably something she couldn't pronounce, but always said she adored. Amelia opened the door slowly. Sloane's eyes swept the dingy room, barely hiding her distaste. "Hi," she said. Amelia didn't respond. "I heard from someone, a man. He called my office," Sloane said carefully. "Julian Westwood." Amelia stiffened. "He said he met you on a flight, that there was a misunderstanding. And he's been trying to find you." Amelia crossed her arms. "Did he tell you how he conveniently sat next to a struggling single mom? One that just so happened to fit into his latest foundation program?" Sloane's expression softened. "He told me he wasn't there to recruit anyone." Amelia laughed, bitter. "Of course he did. That's what people like him do. They swoop in with kindness, get your trust, and then use your pain to sell a cause." Sloane sat on the bed, her voice quiet. "Is that really who you think he is?" Amelia hesitated. "I don't know. I feel stupid." "He didn't make you feel seen?" Sloane asked. Amelia's eyes welled up. "He made me feel safe. Like I mattered. And now, I don't know if that was real, or just strategy." Sloane handed her a tissue. "You know what's funny? I've met men with yachts and tailored suits my whole life, but I've never met one who remembered the name of the woman he helped on a flight, who could describe her baby's laugh, who teared up when he told me she fell asleep in his arms." Amelia looked away. "Maybe he's not what you think," Sloane said softly. They sat in silence, the hum of the broken heater the only sound. Finally, Amelia whispered, "What if I was just a moment of charity to him? Then he wouldn't still be in Chicago waiting to see you." Amelia blinked. "What?" "He's at my wedding venue," Sloane said. "I invited him." "You what?" "He didn't ask. He just said he hoped you'd come, that he needed to explain properly. So I told him, show up and prove it." Amelia's heart thundered. She looked at Grace, sleeping beside them. Sloane continued, "He said he didn't want to help you because you needed saving. He wanted to help because you reminded him of someone he loved." "Who?" Amelia asked. "His mother." That one word cracked Amelia wide open. Sloane stood and walked toward the door. "Come tomorrow," she said. "Not for me, for you." And then she was gone. Amelia sat there, her emotions churning. Was it possible she'd been wrong? Had she pushed away the one person who truly saw her not as a cause, not as a charity, but as a woman worth loving? She picked up Julian's card again. It still felt warm in her hand. The emerald dress shimmered softly in the golden glow of the hotel ballroom. Amelia stood just outside the grand double doors, her fingers nervously gripping the small clutch Sloane had loaned her. Her heart pounded louder than the music drifting from inside. She'd spent the last hour trying to decide whether or not to show up now that she had. Every instinct screamed for her to turn around. What was she doing here? Inside were people with designer suits and flawless makeup. People who belonged. People who had never known what it felt like to count quarters for gas money or dilute baby formula to make it last an extra day. And yet, somewhere in that crowd was Julian Westwood. The man who had held her child like she was his own. The man who saw her when everyone else saw a disruption. She took one shaky breath and pushed open the door. The ballroom sparkled. Crystal chandeliers. White roses, laughter, clinking glasses. Amelia stepped in slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She scanned the room, unsure if she was hoping to see Julian right away or afraid that she would. And then she did. He was standing near the back, dressed in a crisp black tuxedo that fit him like it was made just for him. He wasn't talking. He wasn't mingling. He was looking at her, straight at her, as if she were the only person in the room. Amelia froze. Julian took a single step forward, and then another. And then he was in front of her. "I was afraid you wouldn't come," he said softly. "I was afraid too," she admitted. He looked at her, really looked at her, and his voice lowered. "You look beautiful." "Don't," she said quickly, her voice tight. "Don't try to make this easy." "I'm not," he replied. "I came because I needed to say what I should have said the moment we landed." Amelia crossed her arms, still unsure where this was going. Julian inhaled deeply. "I wasn't honest with you." "Not about who I was, not about why I was on that flight." She stayed silent, watching him. "Yes, I fly economy sometimes," he continued. "Not to scout people, not to manipulate anyone, but to remember." "To remember what?" "What it feels like to not belong. To be overlooked. To feel like you're invisible unless you're useful to someone." His voice cracked slightly. "My mother used to say, if you forget where you come from, you forget who you're fighting for." She raised me alone. Worked 3 jobs, slept on the floor so I could have the bed, and I never forgot her sacrifices. Amelia's arms dropped slowly. Julian stepped closer. "When I saw you tired, terrified, doing everything you could for Grace, I saw her. I saw the kind of strength this world never praises. And I wanted to help. But more than that, I wanted to know you." Her eyes welled with tears. "I thought it was all some kind of evaluation," she whispered. "Like I was being interviewed for a charity spot." Julian shook his head. "No, you were never a case to me. You were a woman who deserved more than this world had given her." Amelia tried to blink away the tears. "And yes," he added gently, "I've done programs for single mothers. I've funded shelters, started job initiatives. But none of that was what drew me to you." She looked up, her voice quiet. "Then what did?" He smiled. "The way you kept apologizing to everyone on that flight. The way you rocked Grace even when your arms were trembling. The way you let yourself fall asleep just for 10 minutes because you trusted me. Not the CEO. Just me." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want to trust you," she whispered. "I know. But I did." Julian stepped even closer. "I don't want to fix you, Amelia. I want to stand beside you. Even if I live in a motel room and can't pay next month's rent. I don't care where you live. I care about who you are." She let out a shaky breath. Julian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her eyes widened. "No!" he said quickly, reading her panic. "It's not what you think." He opened it. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a silver locket. He lifted it. "My mother wore this every day until the day she died. It was the only thing she kept when she lost the house. I want you to have it." Amelia's hands trembled as he placed it in her palm. "I don't want to buy your forgiveness," he said. "I just want to earn your trust. Whatever it takes." Amelia looked down at the locket, then up at him. There was no agenda in his eyes, no pity. Just hope and something else. Love. Raw, real, overwhelming love. She nodded slowly. "I'm not promising anything," she whispered. "I don't want promises," he said. "I just want a beginning." She let the locket dangle gently from her hand. "Then this is a start." 2 days after the wedding, Amelia found herself standing in front of a quiet brownstone tucked into a quiet side street in Chicago's West Loop. Julian had texted her that morning. "There's somewhere I'd like to take you, just you and Grace. No pressure, just coffee and sunlight." She stared at that message for a long time before replying, "Okay." Now here she was, holding her baby, wondering if she was stepping into something real or something too good to last. The door opened before she knocked. Julian stood there in a grey sweater, his sleeves pushed up, a tea towel in one hand like he'd just come from the kitchen. He looked nothing like the polished CEO she remembered from the ballroom. and everything like the man who had once hummed Grace to sleep 30,000 feet above the ground. "Hi," he said, his voice warm but cautious. Amelia gave a soft nod. "Hi." She stepped in slowly. The house was beautiful but not extravagant. It felt lived in. Warm wooden floors, children's books stacked near a worn armchair, sunlight filtering through white linen curtains. "You live here?" she asked, surprised. He smiled. "Part-time, when I'm in Chicago for the foundation work. And the rest of the time, New York." Or flying somewhere between them. Grace gurgled softly in her arms and Julian lit up. "May I?" he asked gently. Amelia hesitated only a moment before handing her over. Julian took Grace, as if she were porcelain and treasure all at once. "Hi, sweetheart," he whispered, bouncing her gently. "Remember me?" Grace cooed, and grabbed a lock of his hair. Amelia couldn't help but smile. He looked so natural with her, so comfortable. "I made tea," he said, gesturing toward the dining table. "Or coffee, if you're still in survival mode." "Tea is fine," she replied, taking a seat across from him. They sat for a moment in quiet, the kind of silence that felt less awkward and more familiar. Like breathing in sync without trying. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he finally said. "I wasn't sure either." She looked at him carefully. "You said you wanted to earn my trust. That's not something I give easily." "I know," he nodded. "People see a baby and think they're looking at a burden," she continued. "You saw Grace and you smiled. That matters more than all your titles." Julian's eyes softened. "I was raised by someone who never got the credit she deserved. So when I see a woman like you, doing it all on her own, I don't see weakness. I see power." Amelia blinked fast. She wasn't used to hearing words like that, not from a man. He leaned forward slightly. "I'm not trying to rush anything, Amelia. I just want to be around." "If you'll let me." "Why me?" she asked, the question aching in her throat. "You could have anyone. Someone who fits your world." He looked at Grace, then back at her. "Because you remind me what the world is supposed to be about. Not boardrooms, not headlines. But people, real people, you ground me." Her lip trembled. "No one's ever said that to me before." Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo. It was old, slightly faded. "My mom," he said, handing it to her. She saw a young woman in a diner uniform holding a little boy on her hip. "She died before she got to see what I built, but I think she'd like that I found someone who reminds me of her." Amelia exhaled slowly. "That's a lot to put on one person," she whispered. "Then let me start small." He smiled. "Can I take you and Grace to the lake this weekend?" "Just fresh air and a picnic?" Amelia stared at him. "Not the billionaire, not the CEO. Just a man, asking for a moment." "Yes," she said. And for the first time in a long time, the yes didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a choice. The lake shimmered like glass under the soft blush of late afternoon light. Amelia stood barefoot on the grass, holding Grace close as the baby kicked happily at the hem of her sundress. Julian had spread out a checkered blanket near the water's edge, complete with a small cooler, 2 sandwiches, and a bouquet of daisies he'd sheepishly claimed were on sale, but couldn't be passed up. "It's perfect," Amelia said, as she settled beside him. Julian grinned. "I had a feeling Grace was the kind of girl who liked fresh air." "She likes anything that doesn't involve cramped motel rooms and leaky faucets," Amelia replied, only half joking. He watched her carefully, the laughter fading just a little from his expression. "I'm sorry you've had to live that way," he said quietly. "You deserve so much more." She looked at him. "I don't want pity." "It's not pity," he replied. "It's anger. At a world that lets women like you fall through the cracks while men like me get praised for donating what we'll never miss." Amelia was taken aback by the honesty. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was trying to show up. She shifted Grace into his arms and said softly, "Hold her while I eat." Julian took the baby with ease, settling her against his chest. Grace immediately grabbed his tie and shoved it into her mouth. "She has excellent taste," he said, laughing. Amelia smiled between bites of sandwich, watching them. The ease between them. The familiarity that had grown in only a handful of meetings. "Do you want kids?" she asked, surprising herself. Julian looked down at Grace, then back at her. "I didn't think about it much before," he said.
"But lately, yeah, I do."
"I want a home filled with noise and sticky fingers and bedtime stories." "You sure it's not just the novelty?" she asked. "Holding someone else's baby is one thing. Living with the crying, the bills, the late nights." He shook his head. "I don't see her as someone else's." Amelia froze. The words hit her in the chest with gentle force. "Sorry," he added quickly, sensing the weight of what he'd said.
"I didn't mean to overstep," but she shook her head. "No, it's not that."
"It's just, no one's ever said that. Not even her father." Julian's jaw tightened slightly. "You're not alone anymore, Amelia." She looked away, blinking fast. "You say that now, but life has a way of making people leave." He shifted closer, still holding Grace, his voice firm but tender. "I'm not leaving. You don't even know everything about me. Then tell me." She hesitated, then began. "I was engaged once, young, stupid. He was sweet until I got pregnant. Then he became a ghost, said I ruined his future. My sister, she thought I ruined mine too. We didn't talk for 2 years." Julian nodded, not interrupting. "I've worked 3 jobs at once. I've eaten rice for days so Grace could have formula, and I've lied to my landlord more times than I can count." "And you're still standing," he said. "That doesn't make you weak. That makes you unbreakable." She blinked at him. And then, suddenly, quietly, she asked, "What about you? What makes you afraid?" Julian looked toward the lake. "That I'll turn into my father." Amelia tilted her head. "He left when I was 7. Walked out, no warning. My mom never spoke badly about him, but I remember enough. The silence, the waiting. The way she'd say, 'We don't need anyone else, baby,' even when I knew she cried at night." He looked at her, his voice raw. "I swore I'd never be that man. But sometimes I get scared. That all this, the money, the name, that it'll make me forget how to stay." Amelia reached out slowly, placing her hand on his. "You haven't forgotten," she said. "You're here. With us." He stared at their hands, then back at her. And then, without fanfare, without grand declarations, he leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't rehearsed. It was soft, earnest, full of everything they hadn't said out loud. When they pulled apart, Grace clapped, totally unaware of what had just happened. They both laughed, and something inside Amelia eased. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Julian said. "But maybe we can be scared together." She nodded. And for the first time, the fear didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a doorway. The terminal buzzed with familiar chaos. Families clutched bags, flight announcements crackled overhead, and tired travelers rushed past one another without meeting eyes. Amelia stood still in the middle of it all, heart pounding. Grace dozed in her arms, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mother's chest. Across the waiting area, Julian approached with 2 coffees in hand, and that same gentle smile that had once calmed her mid-air panic. But today, she couldn't return it. Instead, she held up the folded news clipping Carmen had slipped into her purse that morning. Julian slowed. His expression changed instantly. "You read it," he said softly. "I did," she replied. The article was from last year, a glowing feature in Business Weekly. It described Julian Whitmore's unorthodox approach to philanthropy, including stories of immersing himself in low-income communities and strategically placing himself where help is needed most. Strategic immersion, Amelia quoted. That's what the article called it. Not kindness, not coincidence. Julian sighed. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Amelia's voice trembled. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you spotted a single mom on a flight, sized her up as a potential project, and decided to work your magic. His jaw tightened. That's not how it happened. But it is what happened, isn't it? She shifted Grace in her arms, protective now. I told you everything about my rent, my car, my sister, and you just sat there, letting me believe we were two strangers who met by chance. Not a billionaire scouting another sad story for his next press release. I wasn't scouting anyone, he said firmly. I was listening, because I cared, because I still do. Then why not tell me who you were from the beginning? Julian stepped closer. Because I didn't want you to shut me out. Because I didn't want your walls to go up the second you heard Whitmore Industries. They still went up, she said bitterly. Just later. After it mattered. A beat of silence passed between them. The hum of the airport was distant now. All she could hear was the thud of her own heart. Amelia, Julian said, voice low and breaking, I didn't lie to manipulate you. I lied because I was falling for you, and I didn't know how to make that real without scaring you away. She shook her head, eyes filled with tears. You should have trusted me enough to let me decide who you are. Julian looked like he'd been slapped. He stared at her, eyes glossy. I never wanted you to feel like a case. You're not. You're you, strong. Brilliant, resilient. Amelia backed up. I can't do this, Julian. I can't raise Grace wondering whether you're here for us or just the story we represent. I've spent my whole life surviving people who meant well but left anyway. Julian reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I need to go, she whispered. Please don't, he said. Don't let one article erase everything we've built. But she was already turning. She didn't look back until she was halfway down the concourse. And when she did, she saw him standing there, completely still, holding both coffees, as if letting go of them meant letting go of her. Her chest ached. She didn't stop walking. That night, the motel room was colder than usual. Amelia curled up in the bed, Grace snuggled beside her, and stared at the business card Julian had given her weeks ago. She traced the raised letters Julian Whitmore, CEO with a fingertip, but didn't dial. Not yet. Not tonight. A part of her longed to hear his voice, to hear him say again that she wasn't alone. But a louder voice whispered, You've trusted before, and look where it got you. Tears slid down her cheeks as Grace stirred and curled closer. I'm sorry, baby, she murmured. I just don't know who to trust anymore. The wind outside rattled the windows. Inside, the quiet was deafening. Somewhere across the city, Julian sat alone in his loft, staring at the spot on his couch where Grace had fallen asleep 2 nights ago. The stuffed giraffe she'd dropped still sat there, forgotten. He hadn't picked it up. He wasn't sure he could. Rain pattered against the window of the small church hall where Sloane Carter's wedding reception was underway. Inside, warmth and candlelight danced across gold-rimmed glasses, white linen and soft music. But Amelia Carter stood in the hallway outside the ballroom, her fingers nervously tightening the strap on her borrowed green dress. She wasn't here to make a scene. She was here because she had to know if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, walking away from Julian Westwood. The doors opened, and there he was, across the ballroom, standing alone near the far wall, talking to no one, dressed in a dark tuxedo that made him look more untouchable than ever. But when he turned and saw her, his expression shattered. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just watched her, as if afraid she might disappear. She walked toward him slowly, heart hammering. When she reached him, she took a deep breath. I read the article, she said softly, and I got angry. But what hurt most was that I wanted to believe you were just a man who held my baby and cared. Julian nodded. silent. "I didn't want to be another name in your philanthropy reports." "You're not," he said, voice hoarse. "You never were. You should have told me sooner." "I should have," he admitted. "I thought I was protecting something fragile. But maybe I was just protecting myself from being seen without the suit." Amelia looked down, then back up. "Grace misses you." Julian's eyes softened. "I miss her more than I can say." Silence. "And then, I was wrong to run," she whispered. "I was wrong to hide," he replied. They stood like that, heart to heart, not quite touching, but not apart. "I'm scared," she confessed. "So am I," he echoed. "But I think," she continued, "maybe we're not supposed to do this fearless. Maybe we're just supposed to do it together." Julian stepped forward, took her hand. "I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a life. A real one, with me, with Grace. With everything messy and beautiful that comes with being a family." Tears filled her eyes. "You still want that, even after all this?" He smiled, a real one, slow and quiet. "I haven't wanted anything else since the moment she drooled on my tie." Amelia laughed through the tears. "I brought her," she whispered. "She's asleep upstairs with the sitter." He nodded. "Can I see her?" She took his hand. They left the ballroom quietly, walking the carpeted halls until they reached the quiet room where Grace slept in a small travel crib, her cheeks rosy and her tiny fists curled near her face. Julian knelt beside her, just staring. "She's perfect," he said softly. "You did so well, Amelia." "No," she said, kneeling beside him. "We're going to do well. From now on." He looked at her then, and she saw it. Not a billionaire, not a CEO, just a man in love with a woman and her child, asking for a chance. She leaned forward and kissed him. This time, it wasn't hesitant. It was an answer. Weeks later. The apartment was small, but warm. Amelia stirred soup on the stove as Grace babbled in her bouncer, and Julian unpacked the last moving box. They'd chosen this place together, not a penthouse, not a mansion, but a home. Their home. "You sure you don't miss your skyscraper views?" she teased. Julian walked over, slid his arms around her waist. "I've got everything I need right here," Grace squealed. They both laughed, and just like that, the noise of their new life began to rise. Music, laughter, spilled milk, late-night talks. Not perfect, but real. Amelia had spent so long surviving. Now she was finally living, and this time, the door wasn't closing, it was wide open. For love, for healing, for everything she thought she'd never have. Life rarely goes according to plan, but sometimes the detours lead us exactly where we need to be. This story reminds us that resilience isn't just about surviving difficult times, it's about staying soft in a world that can be harsh. Amelia, a young mother with nothing but grit and her baby in tow, faced judgment, exhaustion, and the ache of being misunderstood. But in that crowded airplane cabin, a stranger's kindness cracked open a door she thought was long sealed. The lesson here isn't just about love, it's about human connection, about how small acts, holding a crying baby, listening without judgment, showing up with humility, can change the entire course of someone's life. For older viewers who've lived through loss, disappointment, and starting over, this story offers a quiet reminder. It's never too late to receive love, and never too late to give it genuinely and without agenda. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches us that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the very bridge between survival and healing. Sometimes, the stranger who holds your pain with care becomes the one who helps you build your future.